Right now at 4, tragedy in California. A mass shooting at a bar leaves at least several people dead, including a sheriff's deputy. What we know about the shooter and how the community is responding.
Quiet weather across western New York today, but we are tracking a messy storm system on the way tomorrow, and that will end with accumulating lake effect snow for some getting into Saturday. I'll time everything out for you coming up in your 401 forecast.
And just days after Chris Collins learned he'll keep his seat in the 27th district, our News 4's Dave Graber is sitting down with him to find out what's next.
From the station with the most local news, this is News 4 at 4.
Shooting was on that side, so then our friends got the bar stools and they started slamming it against the window so we could get out. Why would someone come into some place where people come just to have fun and to not worry about school or anything and just take over and act like it was nothing?
At least 12 people are dead, including a sheriff's deputy, after a man started shooting at a bar in Southern California. The shooter is also dead. Happened at the Borderline Bar and Grill in the city of Thousand Oaks, that is about 40 miles outside of Los Angeles. As Mary Maloney tells us, the 28-year-old suspect had previous run-ins with law enforcement.
If you're hearing gunshots fired, one person advising there's a subject inside shooting.
An all too familiar dispatch as police get word of another mass shooting, this time in Thousand Oaks, California.
410-3, we got multiple people down. We need a lot of ambulances.
Sheriff's investigators have identified the gunman. They say he was a former Marine and known to law enforcement.
In April of this year, deputies were called to his house for a subject disturbing. They called out our crisis intervention team, our mental health specialist, who met with him, talked to him, and cleared him.
The horror began around 11:20 p.m. when the gunman entered the Borderline Bar and Grill. The country bar was hosting a college night, and it was packed with students.
So then our friends got the bar stools and they started slamming it against the window so we could get out.
Hours after the shooting, loved ones were desperate for answers. Some receiving the news no parent wants to hear.
This is going to be an absolute heart-wrenching time for me and my family.
At least a dozen people were killed, including Sheriff's Deputy Ron Hewless, who was one of the first to respond.
Gave his all. As I told his wife, he died a hero because he went in to save lives, to save other people.
In honor of his sacrifice, a procession traveled with Hewless's body as he was taken from the hospital to the examiner's office. I'm Mary Maloney reporting.
And we, of course, will continue to follow the latest developments on this story and on air and our News 4 app. It is all free for your mobile device. A Buffalo woman spits into the gallery after learning her fate in court. A judge sentenced LaShawn Lewis to 25 years to life in prison for murdering her mother 13 years ago. Prosecutors say she stabbed her mother more than 40 times inside her home on Orange Street in 2005. Lewis claims she was innocent during her sentencing.
She was my best friend. She was my strength. There's no way on earth that I could have taken her life.
A jury disagreed. Lewis was convicted of second-degree murder in September in a retrial after a hung jury in July. She was arrested last November when cold case investigators were able to connect the dots in the case.
The problem was that it was all circumstantial evidence. It was a tough case, and my office, I was willing to take a tough case on.
Lewis has 30 days to appeal her sentence, but the DA says he's confident the right person is heading to prison for the crime. Turning now to your 4-1 forecast, let's take a live look over downtown Buffalo. A very gloomy afternoon. Andrew, I think I saw the sun for a little while earlier this afternoon, but later on it's been pretty gloomy out there, unfortunately.
Yeah, the clouds are starting to move in, but there's nothing falling from those clouds at this point. We're still dry right through this evening. It's tomorrow where things really take a downhill turn, and the weather department planned for a few headaches on the roads tomorrow, especially getting into the late morning and afternoon. Well, there's a look at temperatures right now. It's been a cool day, but you might notice that we don't have that gusty wind, and a little bit of sunshine earlier actually had it feeling like a nice late fall afternoon. Some 30s across the southern tier, though. barely scratching the low 40s here across the Niagara Frontier. 41 here in Buffalo. There's a look at the breeze out of the west, 12 miles an hour here in the city. Again, we're gone with those gusts that we had past 40 miles an hour yesterday and 50 miles an hour the day before. So that's been a noticeable change. Satellite showing those clouds moving on in. They'll continue to thicken a little bit later on tonight. We've got a messy mix of rain and snow well to the southwest, but we've got that heading our way getting into tomorrow morning. I want to show you a quick look at your hour-by-hour forecast. The rest of tonight, we're pretty much good to go. The breeze will shift out of the northeast getting into the overnight hours. Tomorrow, the beginning of the morning commute should be dry for most of us. We're going to start to see some of those showers approaching from the southwest. That first reaches Chautauqua County and then eventually getting into southern Erie County here in the Buffalo Metro throughout the mid-morning hours, closer to 8, 9 a.m. And it's going to be a mix of rain and snow. More rain near the lakeshore and around the metro. We'll likely see some snow, though, across the Niagara Frontier. It should hold on to some more snow across the higher elevations into the afternoon, though. It switches back over to rain, and that'll cause any accumulation to be slushy and just kind of messy out there. And then on the back end of this, we've got accumulating lake effect snow. And I'll tell you all about that coming up in your full forewarned forecast in just a few minutes. Christy?
All right, Andrew, thank you. And remember, you can get the latest forecast in the palm of your hands anytime. Just download our News 4 app. It has the latest news, weather, sports, traffic, and more. And it is free for your phone or your tablet. Clarence Republican Chris Collins will go back to work on Capitol Hill on Monday, less than a week after squeaking out a victory over Democrat Nate McMurray. And 2 days after that election and weeks before the race is certified by the Board of Elections, Collins says he's ready to get back to work. And our News 4's Dave Graber talked to him today.
Said he's ready to get back to work, but it almost really wasn't that way. Tuesday's unofficial results, of course, show Collins leading McMurray by less than 3,000 votes, with more than 12,000 or so votes still to be counted. Now, it is rare that absentee ballots change the outcome of elections, especially in New York State. So that 1% margin that separates winner from loser in this race, it's really not expected to change much. Collins maintains that he and his campaign knew that this would be a tight race. One of the reasons that he had to spend, he says, over $1 million on TV ads and direct mailers. But to say that he thought that it would come down to less than 3,000 votes, similar to the outcome with the race against now Lieutenant Governor Kathy Hochul, that is a bit of a stretch, I think. Also, Collins is quick to say that the federal indictment on insider trading charges hanging over his head, he says that played a big role.
That changed the dynamic because, unfortunately, there are people who believe if you're charged, you're guilty, even though in America you are innocent until proven guilty. But there are those who would think otherwise.
Now, you sat down with Collins for about a half hour earlier today. This is the third time that you spoke to him. What did he have to say this time? You know,
each time it's really been different. We've covered different aspects, of course. Sitting down with him in September, less than a month after that indictment was rolled out. There was a lot of sort of back and forth today about the results of the election and where he goes, I think, from here. The biggest thing I think that we talked about was, could he really be an effective legislator on Capitol Hill, given the fact that he has this indictment hanging over his head? He described it on Tuesday, shortly after he declared victory, that this was a black cloud hanging over his head. So he acknowledges it. But he still says that, yes, he can be an effective legislator. I also asked him about his participation in the committee from which he was asked to resign, that Committee on Energy and Commerce. He was asked to resign after that indictment was rolled out in early August, asked to resign by Paul Ryan. I also asked him if he thought that the government would offer him a plea before his trial date in February of 2020. He did answer that. And we'll have all those details and much more coming up in my report on 5:30, News 4 at 5:30.
All right, definitely looking forward to hearing more of that again at 5:30 tonight. Dave, thanks. Next on News 4, Reaching Out. We'll show you how a new addiction treatment center aims to help women in need. And women's flat track roller derby is one of America's fastest growing sports. We will introduce you to one team whose members don't take that sport very lightly.